What is up, guys, and welcome to a special episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me as always are my three great co-hosts, Fede, Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hammond. And guys, with it being a new year and it being a new month as well, we have a special episode here at Guarani Vision. We had already kicked off our first show of the new year last week, but this time, instead of just going straight into the championship or any Paraguayans abroad, there's actually something big happening this month, and that is the World Cup qualifiers. That's right. With Qatar 2022 only 11 months away, it's hard to believe that. Paraguay will be playing their two games to hopefully still go in with a chance for the qualifiers to qualify for Qatar 2022. They only have two games left, one in January. That will be next week, and then one in February, and then two more in March. And the hope is that they can play that interconfederation playoff against the team from Asia in June. But we'll go into everything that we have to go for into these two games. A different scenario, a team that is desperate for the win, and I mean desperate. And I think the optimism is at really an all-time low. It's probably been the lowest that it's been in quite some time. I mean, I recall World Cup qualifiers in the past where, you know, in this case, Paraguay have already booked their spots to the World Cup, some that where they have already been eliminated, some with them still even with a chance as well. So here they are still mathematically with a chance to qualify for the World Cup. You know, it's hard to believe it. But let's go straight into it. Let's go all the way to the mother country that will host the first game in about exactly a week's time, at around this time, actually, in a week. It's Fede Perez, man. I mean, Fede, how are you? I mean, you know, I think I'm speaking to you in probably the most pessimistic that I've been doing these episodes of World Cup previews. But how are you feeling now a week from this game that will be a different type of game, I would say, you know, different environment, still with the new manager, Guillermo Barros, and some players that have also have gotten a chance to appear.
Hi, Roberto. Hi, Ralph. Hi, Maria. Hi, everybody. Well, at least we got our Albi Rojas on. I don't know how many people are going to put them on next week, really. I don't think a lot of people are feeling what's going on with this team, but it is now or never. I got my prayers going on. I got my candles lit up. You know, we gotta apply for some sort of miracle now. We need everything we can, really. We got to this point because of everything that has happened so far. Our leaders, our players haven't showed up. We had trouble with our coach. We have a different coach now. It's Celoto. He only has had two games, and it didn't go as well as he thought he would against Chile, and then against Colombia. We couldn't win either of those two games. So it's now against Uruguay and then Brazil. These are the two games that we're going to talk about today. Up until now, it's actually been more of a nightmare than a fun ride to the next World Cup for Qatar here for Paraguayan fans. And now I'm just hopeful for a couple of things in these two games, actually, just to see Jesus Medina, the MLS champion that was called up this time. At least we got some sort of news. We got a couple of new players. We have a whole bunch of injured players. Also, we need to talk a little bit about that. And I don't know what you guys are willing to promise if the miracle is actually can actually become a reality, because we're up in this situation now. If we win all four of these games that are coming up, Paraguay can still do it. But I mean, I don't know if a lot of people are really putting their hands on this team because they haven't shown much yet. So I don't have my hopes up yet, and we have to go against two very strong teams. Uruguay first. They have a new coach also. And then you have the strongest team in South America, which is Brazil, and they just are not giving up. They're taking their best roster to these two games also, and they just have a beautiful team. So, yeah, I'm kind of scared, to be honest with you, Roberto. I'm not looking forward to it much.
I know it's really a difficult situation to be in. I mean, Paraguay really did not want to go into the situation, into these two games that are relatively very difficult against two former world champions in Uruguay and Brazil. So we definitely have to see what happens. But, you know, Ralph, I'll go to you on this one first, because like Fede said, I think every Paraguayan is praying to every saint possible out there, and in saints in other religions or anything, for some sort of a miracle. What do I promise? if Paraguay do indeed qualify for the World Cup, oh man, it has to be something intense at this point because the optimism is at an all-time low. And you look at the situation that's been going on, even what's relatively going on in the Paraguayan game itself is unfortunately a consequence of what's happening on the national team. Because you look at some of the players out there, like you had mentioned, Fede, Jesus Medina, a champion with the MLS, at New York City. Obviously, we saw Gustavo Gomez win the Copa Libertadores again with Palmeiras. Junior Alonso, who's now at Russia, won it with Atletico Mineiro. It's you have all these players winning championships, but you're not seeing it perform on the national team. So any type of hope whatsoever. I mean, I don't want it to be a somber episode that we're going to have to do in all of the remaining ones, but I, as optimistic as I usually am during these times, I'm not feeling it either, honestly.
We should go back into the archives and look at these episodes we've been doing, and the kind of optimism has slowly ebbed away with Paraguay never quite clicking. They've been close, I think, a few times. At the beginning, we thought they drew those 2 home games that they should have won against Peru and Bolivia at the very start. But we thought, well, this is a work in progress, a new team, young team. Maybe it can click. But of course, we've got to hear. And I was going to say they need results to go their way, which is part of it because they're 4 points away at the moment from the qualification zone. But results have been going their way the whole time. All the teams are dropping points except for Brazil and Argentina. So there's always, that's why they're still in mathematically with a chance, having only picked up 13 points. There is still that chance. The hope, well, no, let's go to the promise first. The promise, I remember Fede, when Guarani were doing really well, he said he would walk to Villarrica if Guarani won the championship. So I think we need to just walk to Qatar at this point if they qualify. Or maybe we get to do a boat or something, but we should do some kind of pilgrimage in November. But in terms of the hope, the hope that Paraguay have is that for the first game, at least against Uruguay, traditionally they've always done very well at home to Uruguay until the last 2 World Cup qualifiers. 2011 qualifying for 14, they drew 1-1. They needed like a Richard Ortiz equalize at the very end. And this was, of course, a very good Uruguay that was just returning from semi-finals of the World Cup in South Africa. It wasn't such a good Paraguay team because remember the Paraguay team that got to the quarterfinals was an aging side. Then they lost for the first time. I think it was 2016 or 2017. If memory serves, 2017, Roberto's reminding me because it was just before I moved to Miami and they lost at home for the first time with it. But it was a really good strike by Fede Valverde, who at the time was this kind of unknown quantity. Of course, now he's much more solidified in Real Madrid. But at the time, it was this wonder strike from this wonder kid. And so maybe a one-off result in that sense. So Paraguay do have that hope that traditionally they've done well against Uruguay. But then you have the game against Brazil, which is going to be, there's no way to look at that and see a way of picking up points unless, of course, Brazil have already qualified. There's a lot of tired players. There's a lot of tired footballers around the world right now. We're seeing this in all competitions. I think the level of competition over the last couple of months, especially Roberto, you follow English football, where there's been an intensity of games. I don't think the level has been quite what it is usually because people are so tired from playing all these games. Players are recovering from COVID. We're finding players that were not fully recovered, right? So that's the only maybe glimmer of hope for the Brazil game that something happens there. But let's see. Well, we're still in with the mathematical chance. We have to go for it, right? We have to be positive.
The numbers don't lie, I guess. And Maria, I mean, you go into this really, and Ralph has bring up so many great points, and I don't know where to begin. But I mean, for promises, tattoos, maybe, I guess something has to be, but a big one at this point. Because if you're gonna go hard and you have qualified in this way, I'm like, just do it at this point. But no, I think Ralph brings up a good point. I think obviously the fact that Paraguay has not taken advantage of not only their results, but the fact that the results happening all across South America puts them in the spot still to qualify with a chance mathematically. And it feels frustrating. You look at right now, the Paraguay form that's been going on over the last few games. They haven't scored in 6 games. I mean, that is absolutely putrid of Paraguay. And, it's really difficult to see where the goals are going to come from. And the fact that the last time that they did score, and it was against Venezuela, and it was a really tight game that everyone thought maybe Venezuela was going to tie it. And so I don't know what kind of optimism is really there with this side. And, I think this is always going to be an issue with the new manager coming in, with the Barros Schelotto twins replacing Berizzo. It doesn't work out. But then again, Uruguay are also in a situation, albeit a bit better than what Paraguay is, changing their manager. So both teams are desperate for points and desperate for wins in this case. But yeah, it's going to be very, very hard to see what's going to get from these results. I mean, I feel pessimistic. I mean, I don't know how you're feeling about this, because I have a bad feeling about what's going to happen in these 2 games.
No, you're right, and I agree with everyone here. I think the mood here is just very sad and very pessimistic, because we have seen this trend of Paraguay going down. We haven't seen them play well since, I don't know, the Copa America last year, and it sucks because they had this other chance to go to the World Cup, and it's going to be another year that we don't go, and it's just so frustrating. I don't even know how to grade this team anymore, because we don't have star players, we don't have goal makers, we don't have a real captain, and we don't even have a good real coach anymore. We had Berizzo going up and down, and now we have Schelotto, which we haven't even seen him in action yet. So there's a lot of negative points to this team as of right now. Hopefully, we do get a good result against Uruguay, and we get to bring our smiles back next time that we get together. And I guess at least I am like 90% pessimistic, 10% hopeful. So we'll see what happens. I don't really have much more of an opinion, than what you guys have. So it's just really hard and frustrating.
It really is. And I don't know if you're feeling the frustration on your reactions there, because it really is a mood that we've seen time and time again over the last decade or so. This whole notion of having that hope, and then it just completely crashes. So I mean, I don't know what to expect. And honestly, I guess we have to just jump in and see what happens, because the first game, obviously, like you said, Maria, that we need a positive result. Well, that positive result is 3 points. That is necessary. Anything below that just makes it even worse. So we look into the game against Uruguay in a different scenario, actually. This is going to be the first time that Paraguay will not be playing at the Estadio Defensores del Chaco, their mythical home for various decades, that has been home to really huge events in Paraguayan football, not just at the national team level, but also at the club level. They've decided, the APF, to move to La Nueva Olla, the biggest stadium in Paraguay, and obviously the home of Cerro Porteño. So it was something that had been going on and had some rumors for quite some time that they needed this change of environment, and it happened. It will be for the first time. I think it's been over half a century, Ralph, you're going to have to correct me on that Paraguay will be playing a game in a World Cup qualifier that is outside of the national stadium, from Sajonia to Barrio Obrero. And Fede, I mean, we got to go on this one. I mean, how fundamental is that? I mean, we've seen teams across South America change their national stadiums. We see it with Brazil all the time, and obviously big country makes sense. But we saw even Uruguay. Last time that they played, I think it was against Argentina, they moved from the Centenario to Peñarol Stadium, the Campeón del Siglo. So this has been a trend that's been going on all across South America, but now we're finally seeing Paraguay move into that trend. So, do you feel that that might be a big factor for this one, or do you feel that it's still up to what we're seeing from the players on the pitch?
Well, it was a decision made by the staff, right? So there must be something behind it. I remember some players even coming to the country, the Argentinian players, saying something about the ground of the Defensores del Chaco. They're making a big change there in Defensores del Chaco Stadium. That's why it wasn't available also at this time of the year. This is usually the time where they do some sort of maintain for the ground, so it could be well for the rest of the year, because we're just starting the season here. So it's not being used, and this Geloto saw that Cerro Porteño Stadium, it is the best stadium right now we have in Paraguay. It's the most modern. It's brand new, and I even think Cerro Porteño fans deserve this moment. Unfortunately, it comes at a really bad time for the national team, so there isn't a much excitement around it. I don't even think there's going to be that many tickets sold, to be honest. Hopefully, I was actually even looking at how cheap the tickets are this time. It's not the usual prices that we're accustomed to seeing here for our national team games, and it has to do with the position that we're on right now, right? So yeah, Roberto's telling me the most expensive ticket right now is barely $11, so it's not that much. I mean, we've had situations where people had to pay so much more, and it has to do with the reality of the national team, and just because we need as many people as we can get behind this team. I mean, I don't think a lot of people are going to be moved into going to the stadium. I'm not seeing that really on the days before this game happening, especially because it is going to be on a hard time, January. Not a lot of people have money, and everybody spend it on their holidays. So I'm not looking forward into having that atmosphere, into having a lot of people. And maybe it's a good thing for these guys also. Maybe it's a reality check, right? I mean, they haven't done much to deserve it either. I mean, I wouldn't pay a ticket to watch these guys right now, to be honest. I'm going because I got to work, because I mean, lately it's been feeling like this for the national team. It's been feeling like work more than pleasure. I mean, I know most of the Paraguayan fans that have watched their national team games. I mean, they do it because it is their national team, not because they're enjoying it right now. Because this team is not showing much lately, and I just hope that they can get it done at least against Uruguay at home, which is something that we haven't been able to do. We didn't learn that lesson from last time around either, because we had the same problem trying to get to the last World Cup. Also, we couldn't win at home, and we haven't been able to do it either for Qatar. And so hopefully, at least on this game, we have two last home games, and I'm hoping that we can win at least these two home games, and especially see young players, Roberto. I've been talking about this, and I'm seeing on this list Angel Gonzalez, a brand new goalkeeper. I'm seeing Jesus Medina, a brand new player. He's not that young, but he's a brand new name. You have Brian Ojeda, who has just gotten to the European football in Nottingham Forest in England. You have players like Matias Villasandi, who just left Cerro Porteño. He just left Paraguay. So you have players out there that you want to see, that I think are the future of this national team. Julio Enciso, which is a player that we mentioned several times. I hope he's going to be there also. And then you have players that just haven't come around. You guys mentioned some of them. Gustavo Gomez, he was supposed to be our big captain, and he's gotten more criticism actually than applauses up this far. There are a couple of players where I think deserve their due, with like Anthony Silva. He's had a great run, I think, even though the team hasn't backed him up, but he's had a good performance, and he's taken that also to his club, because he's living a great moment with Puebla in Mexico. So I'm always following what he's doing, but he's not that young either. So that's why they're bringing in Angel Gonzalez, which is a brand new goalkeeper from Porto, from Portugal. So you kind of want to see these new players, you kind of want to see these new names, but I don't think we're going to see them yet. I think we're going to see the names that we've seen so far, and it's your time. It's been your time. All this way to Qatar, and you just haven't made it. So they got to finish the job one way or the other. They're gonna have to finish the job.
We saw that with the last combo, that we were thinking maybe we'll see a lot of changes in the squad or in the selection because it was the new coach. But Barros went with pretty much that same core players, and Jesus Medina that we're talking about that's in, he's really only in because Kaku has suffered a really bad injury. He's got like a ligament injury. So Kaku was that more creative player that you would have hoped could have done something, because when he's been on the pitch, I think that's the few times Paraguay have looked a bit more creative. But so in comes Medina to replace that. And so Paraguay going with this quite similar core of players is actually very different to the opponents, Uruguay, because Uruguay have just confirmed the final list. They had this really big list and they've scaled it down today. And they've got about 8 new faces because, of course, they have the new coach as well. They have Diego Alonso, who knows Paraguay very well. He was coach at Olimpia and Guarani. And he seems to have put a few new players in to make the point of I'm now taking over. This is a new side. But then Uruguay still have that very strong core of players, and they have Suarez and Cavani up front that have really tormented Paraguay for so long. I was just looking back to see when was the last time Paraguay did actually win against Uruguay, and it was the home World Cup qualifier when Tata Martino was still the coach back in 2007. I was at that game, so if I remember rightly, I can't remember which way around, but it's either Salvador Cabañas wins the ball and flicks it over to Aido Valdez. Yeah, Roberto's confirming it was Nelson that scored, because I always remember as those two combined so well in those qualifiers. And this was one of the early games. It's October 2007. So it's one of the first in that qualifying for South Africa. And that's when that partnership started to blossom. But that's the last time, 2007. Since then, it's not just been World Cup qualifiers. We faced them a few times in the Copa America final, 2011, which we lost. More recently, the Copa America, we lost 1-0. So we found it really hard against Uruguay, and I was mentioning Cavani and Suarez because this is pretty much their time. Since those two came into the side, it's around, well, when they're both in, I think it's by 2010, more or less, because that's when Forlan is kind of shifted out. Since then, we just haven't been able to beat them. So this is the difficulty we face. Now they have this new team. They're in their transition, so maybe this is where the gap is. But Paraguay have found it very hard to go toe to toe.
Yeah, I mean it's been really difficult, and Maria, I just want your thoughts on this as well, because heading into this game against Uruguay, again, also a team that has been going on issues as well. They haven't won their last 5 games, albeit they lost 4 of their last games, and it's for them. It's they want that win more than we do, and we're at home, and they're taking into this advantage of a new coach. They have the talented players. I mean, it's a who's who of whoever's playing in all around the world in Uruguay. Notice the big names like Suarez, Cavani, but you have the other ones like Valverde at Real Madrid, or Bentancur at Juventus, or Vecino at Inter, and many other players that are playing all across the world. So the depth of talent that Uruguay have is just incomparable with what Paraguay is going on. But despite Uruguay always getting the upper hand against Paraguay, they've always been tough games, actually. They haven't been games that games have been able to dominate so far. And Rob just put up a good stat here that their only away win was in La Paz so far, which is very difficult for teams to do in South America. So it's it really is going to be a case where both teams are literally fighting to the death, because that's literally what's at stake, that these teams cannot afford to lose more points as the games get more difficult for them, and get the help from the other countries as well, as they are able to play off their games.
Yes, it's definitely going to be one of those games where it's all or nothing once again for Paraguay. We didn't want to be in this situation, but here we are again. And Uruguay has just been. I was gonna say they have been one of those teams that we always give them a good game for some reason. And hopefully this will be one of those again, and we'll get to see more out of our players, more effort out of our players, and a big fight for the 3 points that we really, really need. Unfortunately, we're in the situation where we are going to face two big giants, Uruguay and Brazil, and they couldn't take advantage of what the other games were, against I want to say less tough teams, but they do have an advantage that Uruguay does give them a good game. So I think that they're gonna have a good one. We'll see. Hopefully they do get 3 points. It's gonna be a tight game. It's gonna be a tight game, especially because I haven't seen the way that Schelotto plays or puts his team to play. So I'm just hoping for the best at this point. We still have to see the local players call ups, so I can't really make a decision, a prediction based on what we have so far. But we do know that Uruguay always gives us a good game.
I mean, it really is something that we're in a situation where, for these players, they have to show up, because I think, if Paraguay goes into a situation where they don't pick up the points, assuming they don't also get the points against Brazil, and looking in those next 2 games, I think that's the test where it's like, okay, I mean, you've done what you're able to do, but now with it being mathematically impossible, let's give these news guys a shot, like Fede was mentioning. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I think obviously everything that correlates to what happens against Uruguay will definitely relate to the game happening against Brazil. And, heading into this one, guys, I mean, this is where, if Paraguay have been able to break records on their bad disposal, like you had mentioned, Ralph, I mean, this one is, you're praying to every Saints, the Saints kids, parents, all those kind of stuff, because Paraguay will be out to Brazil to play the Seleção at the Mineirão, where a huge record still stands for the already qualified Brazil. They have never lost a home World Cup qualifier in their history. And looking at the list of what Brazil has, I mean, despite them qualifying, they are without Neymar. I mean, that is a player that actually has been able to get the upper hand. Ralph, you had mentioned that Suarez and Cavani have always been that kind of kryptonite for Paraguay when it comes to Uruguay. But for Brazil's case, it's been Neymar as well, who has always been able to get his best games against Paraguay. But he will not be in the squad, being injured in the last few months. But, it's a who's who of who's in that list. You got Alisson in goal, Ederson in goal. You still look at Dani Alves is still kicking it at Barcelona at his age. Thiago Silva doing well at Chelsea. Marquinhos at PSG. Look at the midfield. Obviously, Coutinho returning to Aston Villa, getting a goal on his debut for them. But you have players like Casemiro's been doing well. Paquetá at Lyon, Fred at Manchester United, Fabinho at Liverpool. And the attack, I mean, Gabriel Jesus at City, Gabi Barbosa, Gabigol, who's been one of the best players in South America for quite some time at Flamengo, Vinicius Jr., who's been doing well at Real Madrid. I mean, this is going to be difficult. I mean, Ralph, I'll go to you on this one as well, because not only is history on the line on this one, I think it's just their pride as well. I think, if anything that you want to play at your best game, it's against these guys. I mean, you're playing the best of South America, like Fede had mentioned, and obviously depending on what happens in the game against Uruguay, I mean, for this game, you got to show up your best regardless. And I mean, Mauro Schelotto really has to pinpoint the perfect game to be able to get a result in Brazil.
Yeah, Paraguay have drawn twice in Brazil in World Cup qualifiers, back in 77 and 85. But just for context, 1977 is just before they go and win the Copa America, of course, in 79. 85, going to that 86 World Cup, was one of their better teams of that age, with Cayetano Reyes as the coach. Both of those draws were in Rio. They've never played Brazil in the Mineirão. This is the first time. In fact, their only game in the Mineirão before was the 1-0 draw with Argentina in the Copa America 2019. So it's a rare time they go there. Junior Alonso gets to go back, of course. Junior Alonso has just been there, had a great couple of years there, and then he's headed off to Russia, and now he's straight back to Brazil to have to be there again. But in terms of finding a result, it's very difficult. I mean, you relayed some of those names, Roberto, but I would be really honest. I think if Tiche only chose a team of local Brazilian players, like Brazilian players based in Brazil, they would still give Paraguay a very good game. That's how strong they are. The difference, the gulf with Brazil and the rest of South America is getting very big. And then we're talking Paraguay are down towards the bottom, the second from bottom. It's a huge gulf. This is a huge task. And I think what you'll see is all the focus really is on the Uruguay game. And this is, can you get a 0-0 draw? Because Brazil as well have only conceded 4 goals. That's for all these attacking players. It's defensively, they're so well organized. And they've conceded 4 goals. 2 of them were to Peru in a very more open game, a 4-2 win. And then I think Luis Suarez got 1 like a consolation, and Venezuela, because Venezuela were leading against Brazil at home, but then Brazil blew them away 3-1 or 4-1 or something. So it's going to be, there's really no real hope in this one. I mean, but that's not even being pessimistic of this particular Paraguay. As we're talking, even the good Paraguay teams of the Martino era, of the Carpegiani, of all that kind of times, they've never picked up a result. We're talking about 1985 was that last time they got any kind of result in a World Cup qualifier in Brazil. It's just a difficult place to go, and it's somewhere that all the other teams have gone and lost. So in terms of direct competition for their places, this wasn't a place you're targeting to try and get points. Anything is a miracle, even the 0-0 draw.
Yeah, this is the hardest game for all the national teams in the South American qualifiers. I mean, nobody wants to play against Brazil. Everybody knows that when you play against Brazil, you're most likely to lose. That's what's happened on this qualifiers. Also, Brazil has been the strongest team, and you're just kind of hoping that they're already in the World Cup. You're just hoping that you're gonna get them on a relaxed day, and hopefully they have a picnic against. I think they play Ecuador on the first game. Hopefully they make a whole bunch of goals against them, and they have some pity on us, and hopefully we are a little bit stronger by then. Also, I mean, we need to show something against Uruguay first, and then try to build from that against Brazil. And if there's something that we haven't been able to do is also repeat formation. I mean, we don't usually see the same starting 11 from one game to the other between 3 days between matches. And I hope we can do that eventually. But for that, you do need a result to back you up, and so you're gonna need that against Uruguay first. You're going to have to show that you are getting stronger somehow. And maybe an advantage is that we do have Gustavo Gomez. We have Junior Alonso. They played against a lot of Brazilian players lately. They've been really strong in the Brazilian league. So, from that point of view, I just hope that we have something back there to stop these stars, that we have something to stop the all that power that Brazil has up there, especially with their forwards. Even though Neymar's not going to be there, whoever comes in, they have a whole bunch of stars waiting for their chances also. And most of these Brazilian players, they're playing for a spot on that final list to go to the World Cup now. I mean, they're already there. So for them, it's just a race against their own teammates right now, more than against the rest of the national teams here in the South American game. And for us, it's just about finding something and building from it. And Schelotto has to show something on these games, in these 4 games, not just these 2. Schelotto needs to show something for the future, because they told him that he's going to be here for the next Copa America also, and he's thinking about that time that he's going to have before the Copa America. Hopefully a month to work with the squad, but you don't have that time right now. All you have right now is game planning, and it's executing it during the game and making a couple of changes, reading the matches correctly. And he needs to show that he can do that. Also, he needs to show that he can do that. And I didn't see much of that against Chile and against Colombia. And I'm hoping that the coach starts to improve in that sense, because the players aren't showing much. We barely shoot at target. I mean, against Colombia, we didn't get a shot at target again. So I'm just hoping that we can get a shot at least against Uruguay, against Brazil. Show something. We need it, Roberto.
I was going to jump in, and Maria, you can jump in as well afterwards. But assuming that Paraguay don't get the result against Uruguay, and albeit that you had mentioned, Fede, that you bring up a good point about how Scudetto has to show his project and what he wants to show from this team. Is this the case where you bring in the youngsters, the players that haven't been experienced, and allow them to shine? Or do you feel that for a game like this, being it Brazil, being it the strongest team in South America, you still go for your strongest players?
I don't know if you were asking me. Okay. Well, yeah, I think I was thinking about, some other conversation that we could have later on in another episode. It's, what's the reason of why Paraguay is in the situation, and I think one of those could be the fact that we don't pay attention to our youngest players. So yeah, it could be that he can experiment, Schelotto can experiment with younger players, bring them in so that they can experience the game and get together with the team, change it up. I think that we haven't seen results with our seniors, and it's time for a change, and it's really necessary to start building up from the beginning, from the bottom. And I think that Paraguay hasn't done that in a long time, or ever, if I remember, or if anyone knows. So it is important to pay attention to the young players and give them more time. They are young, and they could give us more than our usual players. I'm not talking about get rid of our starting 11 or our star players, but give the young ones more of a chance. So yeah, I do think that will be a good idea.
It's definitely for another episode, because there's I think a whole combination of reasons why we're here. But talking about the young players particularly is a good point, Maria, because the APF are going to bring back this under-19s rule, where in the top division teams are going to have to field those younger players, which has always been the idea behind it. Supposedly has always been to help with the national team. But then what we're seeing is that at this national team level, there aren't those chances, or there haven't been some of those chances. And this is a perfect time, like we're talking about, to have a look at some of these players. I think there's also been a difficulty with the younger players. They're in this very difficult situation. So it can also be throwing in a player in a bad team, a young player in a bad team can also be very difficult for them. It's much easier to put on the young players when you're 3-0 up at the end of a game and start giving them some of that nice experience. But at the moment, it would be for Julio Enciso, for example, it would be like a huge task for him to try and start scoring the goals that nobody else has been able to do. But I definitely think this, going back to the structure, there was a good structure at a time where they used to do what they called microciclos, where the kids would go, I think every Monday and Tuesday to Upane, to the center. They train together, then they go back to their clubs. Usually Thursday, Friday, they play the reserve game or the under-20s game at their club level. So they're having constant football, because what can happen with these kids when they're very young in Paraguay is you can easily not be in the right shape or lose focus, get distracted, that kind of thing. And the clubs aren't always giving you that day-to-day attention that you need. Whereas if you're with the national team, those very best on the Mondays and Tuesdays, and then that helps. But if you're talking about the last golden generation that really did well, it's right back in 1992. If we're honest, it's that Barcelona team in the Barcelona Olympics, which then brought you all the success 6 years later in 1998. Because at the time, qualifying for the last 16, qualifying for the World Cup itself, but also the last 16, was a huge piece of success for Paraguay, and then that snowballed into where we got to by 2010. So it has been, I think, a long time since we've had a very strong youth setup.
Yeah, and we had a whole bunch of bad decisions made, right, by our coaches, poor managing, but also the people behind it all, because Berizzo wasn't a good coach after all. Everything that he was fighting, he wasn't keeping in there, and he wasn't maintaining the good things that we were seeing. That's what I didn't like about Berizzo's work, especially. And we have players that even quit on this project. Players that didn't even want to play on the national team lately, and that was kind of weird. To see even for this list, Sanso Ortiz. He's apparently injured, but he has to play the World Cup, the Clubs World Cup, and he apparently prefers to play that tournament than to play these games with the national team, or to try to play these games with the national team, because he is injured, but he could play the second game. But no, he rather be with Monterrey, the Mexican team, and see if he can do something over there. I mean, that's the reality right now with this national team. I mean, not even the players have been really committed to the cause, and that's something that actually has been really hurtful, and then you have players that could have given you a hand, like Demis Gonzalez, Lorenzo Melgarejo, and you don't even know if they're going to be there right on this list, and they are probably the best two players on the national league right now, or the last season at least. They were one of the two best players, and they should be in there. And Lorenzo Melgarejo had problems also being called up. Demis Gonzalez apparently had some problems with Berizzo also. So there's all these bunch of rumors about players not getting along also, and the atmosphere of the locker room hasn't been well either. And we don't have players in the top leagues in Europe right now also. That's I think a big issue. We haven't been able to sell players like I thought we were going to be able to sell players. I thought the agents were going to get behind this. I thought the national association was going to get after this situation of trying to sell players to the European leagues. You have to sell them young. You have to get them out there, and they have to make a career for themselves over there. If not, it's going to be really hard. And we don't have a star on this national team. We thought it was going to be Miguel Almiron. Almiron never became that star. Angel Romero had his good moments, but he doesn't even have a club right now. Everything that happened to him in San Lorenzo apparently was not good for him, and he's still looking for a club. He hasn't played in over 6 months. I mean, we need him, and he's not prepared for the national team. So you have all these bunch of problems, like Rafa is saying. I mean, if we start making a list, we could be here all night, Roberto.
And that will be for a different episode, obviously, to talk about the issues that go on for Paraguay if they do not make it to Qatar 2022. But before we get into that, or be more pessimistic as much as we do, I think we have to close off this episode with my favorite part, the predictions. And I don't know, guys. I mean, this is probably the most realistic, pessimistic predictions that are going to happen. And I'm going to go first on this one because I feel needed to really get out my feelings about this. Heading into the first game, Uruguay against Paraguay at La Nueva Olla. Like you had mentioned, Ralph, this was the only time that Uruguay got a win in Paraguay, was back in 2017, the 2-1 win. This one, you look at two teams that are desperate for the win, desperate for something. I do like the point that Fede mentioned about how there isn't that much optimism, so that might mean a decreased amount of fans. For some reason, I mean, maybe it's the trend has gone a bit low as of recent, but usually when the pessimistic mood is very, very low, Paraguay tend to do better, only for their hopes to get more higher up. I want to say that Paraguay can provide something and at least show whatever it takes to get this result, but I just don't see it. I genuinely do not see where we're going to get these goals, where anything's going to happen moving forward. I do see a tight game like these two teams always like to play, and ultimately, I think I see a really dull game in the end. I'm going to go for a dull 0-0 draw at La Nueva Olla to start off 2022 qualifiers. And for the game against Brazil, I mean, albeit some sort of miracle, I think I'm going to go for hopefully not an embarrassment, that they can at least show some sort of pride. I'll say 2-0 Brazil on this one. So 1 point picked up from these two games. Fede, I mean, you've been someone that has predicted a lot of these games. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. Usually if you get it wrong, they go on our way. How are you feeling for these two games coming up?
I've been waiting for these guys to show their claws. I've been waiting for these guys to show us something, especially at home. And I don't know, we're going to play at a different ground now. We're going to play at Cerro Porteño Stadium. I'm just hoping for something different. Maybe win by a goal at least, just suffering there to the last play, and Uruguay trying to get something from it, and just taking this a little bit further, up to that Brazilian game, up to that game against Brazil. And my prediction is we're going to beat Uruguay, and then against Brazil, we're going to have to take our tissues out, and it's going to be over for us there.
Ralph, how are you feeling?
I'm between you two somewhere in this Uruguay game. I could also, what I think from what I've been listening to from some Uruguayan journalists is that these extra players and the way he's called up the team looks like he wants to play 5-3-2. So he wants to play quite defensively. Paraguay, whether they want to play defensively or not, have been ultra defensive the whole time. So Roberto's 0-0 isn't a crazy. It's not a crazy idea. But then I buy in a bit to Fede's feeling that being in the new stadium, a lot of these players used to play at Cerro Porteño as well, and it's that stadium, so that's something we shouldn't forget about. Is that the low prices as well? Don't be surprised. Fede says not a lot of people will go, but sometimes at the very last minute, Paraguayans, the very last minute, they might just all decide, hey, why don't we go? At least we get to see Suarez, right? So, so you might.
It's the first game of the year here in Paraguay, Ralph.
Yeah,
we haven't had football in a while, right? So people are hungry for football. That's true.
Yeah. So all of that could be that kind of red and white wave that they need. So I'm going to go for 1-0 to Paraguay. Maybe they'll find the goal somehow. Tony Sanabria, he's doing okay in Torino at the moment. He's been finding the net a couple of times. So I'll do that. And for Brazil, it won't be a thrashing, I don't think. Brazil have been the whole way Brazil plays, they just control you, and hit at certain points. So it'll be I think a 2-0 for Brazil.
Maria?
I want to say I'm gonna be a little optimistic this time. So I think, Roberto, you're gonna be the only one that's a little bit pessimistic today. But I think I'm gonna go with obviously Brazil is gonna win at home, and I don't think they're gonna get a lot of goals out of this game, simply because I feel like Neymar not being there kind of impacts it. I know that Neymar always likes to score against Paraguay, so that's gonna be I want to say 2-3-0. And the one for Uruguay, they can't get a draw, so I can't go for a draw. I'm gonna go for a 2-0. I'm gonna be a little pessimistic, and I'm gonna pray for goals to the Virgen de Cacupe, and hope that we win. It's a brand new stadium, and hopefully that Cerro spirit, since you guys won, inflicts into the team, and they get some kind of miracle going on there.
Optimistic in this sense. I mean, I'm the one that feels pessimistic on this one, and if I wanted to feel any more pessimistic, I've never seen Paraguay win before. I'll be going to that game on Thursday. Maybe I am the Mufa instead of Kichipoka, so maybe I should probably just stay home and not go to that game. Maybe things will change, but yeah, you're right, Maria. I'm probably gonna have to do a pilgrimage to Cacupe and just pray for a 2-0 win for Paraguay in this one.
Go be the good luck. Go be the
yeah. Might as well. I might as well have to be the good luck charm in this case. But Yeah, let's see what happens. It's obviously now or never again for Paraguay, and really, I think the last chance, albeit mathematically not out yet. But yeah, we'll definitely see what happens. Obviously, we'll keep you guys updated to see what happens from these two games. Obviously, we have the local league also starting up in a couple of weeks, so pay attention to that and always keep yourself updated on what is going to come up. So I think this is a great way to close another great episode of Guarani Vision, this special World Cup preview episode for the games against Uruguay and Brazil. So for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, Maria Britos, and Ralph Hanna, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.